Okay, let's get better. Right, where are we? Okay, World Cup's been going about what, week and 2 days. Still no goalless games. Teams with the most possession are struggling to win games. Counter attack is, I think, the trend in this one. Lots going on in the World Cup, and I have been disappointed by certain teams. I've been disappointed by Argentina, and I've been disappointed by Messi and the whole Argentinian team. That was a mess against Croatia in the second game. Complete and utter mess. No leadership. There was no team unity. It was all individual efforts. It was all wishy-washy, and it was a general mess. Let's get my chat up here. There we go. So far, the tournament's been good in the sense that the atmosphere in stadiums has been really good. The stadiums look really, really good as well. The pitches are holding up really well. Temperatures have been hot and humidity has been a key factor, and we saw that in the Nigeria-Iceland game where the Icelandic players just clearly were dying in the heat. Completely out of their comfort zone. They ran out of energy, and they ended up losing the game, which they probably should or could have been ahead of in the first half, and they just fell apart in the second. A lot of penalties given, but the VAR is missing out on the holding in the box, and Mitrovic and Harry Kane. Look at the instance with them where they've been rugby tackled to the ground. And Switzerland are the only team to come from behind and win a game. So that's the World Cup in a nutshell. It's been insane so far. A lot of teams are underperforming. So the teams from Africa and South America aren't doing well. I think Croatia are, for me, my favourites. We have to see how Belgium do. If Belgium have a good performance, a good first and second half, then we shall see how good the Belgian side really are. But the way they played against Panama in the first 45 wasn't good enough. So we have to see what Belgian team turn up. But for the most part, it's been a reasonable tournament to watch. There has been the one or two games which haven't been great. And that's going to happen at any major tournament, any sport. There's going to be one or two games that don't really rouse the senses. But for the most part, it's been a decent tournament so far. There's been no real nasty injuries. There's only been one red card. I can see that changing though, especially with the way Argentina played and Uruguay. I can see a few teams possibly giving away reds at some point. Obviously, this is Panama's second game to derby. I'll be watching all the games to derby, doing videos on each game today, so that's something to look forward to. And it's been interesting. Away from the World Cup, Danny Cipriani being selected for England today, fly half against Africa, and the England rugby team under the pressure that they're under. It has been a real fall from the top table of rugby. I'm just going to say that. They were ranked third in the world going into the Six Nations. They're now ranked seventh. They've tumbled down the rankings somewhat. Worst run of form under Eddie Jones. Worst run of form, I think, ever when it comes to Test matches. Really in a bad place. And there are multiple reasons why this is. But why has it happened now? Why didn't it happen earlier in Eddie Jones's time in charge? Why did it have to happen between February and now? What's going on? I think the forward Farrell axis does need a change. It's become predictable and plodding, and it's an obvious target area for opposition teams. Is that channel? Farrell's discipline and George Ford's size. There's your one issue. The breakdown. I think some of the forward pack are looking past their best, and some are looking exceptionally overused and tired, and they're not rotating enough young players into the squad, giving enough young players a chance. Penalty count. There's your issues. Breakdown, penalty count, and the 10-12 channel. There's your basic issues. There in a nutshell. If you want to dissect the England's problems, there's three areas: and selection, an over dependence on senior players who are peaked and past their best. And the other three issues, there's your issue. Even cricket is another thing. They lose to Scotland in a one-day match, yet they've smashed Australia. No consistency in English cricket at all. They can't stay consistent and occasionally lose the odd game, but stay consistent and be competitive in every game. They just can't do it in all forms. They set a record ODI total, and they I believe they set a record. They were chasing a record run chase as well against Scotland. So, or they set a record run chase against Scotland. I remember, but they're not consistent enough. Key players getting out far too easily, just silly shot selections, not wanting to run the singles, the short, the ones and twos. Yeah, I don't know what else to say on that, really. I mean, England cricket's got a lot more issues than just selection and consistency. There's far more issues at foot, but there's some of the obvious ones. You look at other sports. Do you look at how they've got issues and they're resolving them, or they're highlighting that's an issue that we're going to work on it. For some reason, in British sport, issues are there and they don't seem to want to tackle those issues. There's been another ball tampering scandal between Sri Lanka, the West Indies. The Sri Lankan players were accused of ball tampering. They refused to take the field on day 2 of their test match. Big hoo-ha. They eventually came out. Sri Lankan captain was sanctioned, dealt with completely differently to the Australian ball tampering. So we'll have to see what happens in that regard. It's been a very, very interesting, since my last live stream, which was about 3 weeks ago, there's been a lot happening. Rafael Nadal's won an 11th French Open title. He's won all 11 finals he's hosted at Roland Garros. I think that's a record that's never going to be close to being broken on clay. Andy Murray's return from injury is up in the air. He's competing at Eastbourne. Whether he decides to go for Wimbledon in 9 days' time is yet to be determined. He struggled at Queen's. In fact, he was out on the first day at Queen's. So, there's that to think about. Andy Murray, is his career, is it being threatened? Yes, Andy Murray's career is definitely under threat from injury. Depending on how he deals with his comeback, he is in the second half of his career now. He may have to be a bit more picky about the tournaments he competes in, how much tennis he plays, but he's on the downside of his career now. It's just how long he can keep managing that hip, because he's probably going to have problems with it again, to be honest. So we have to basically see how long he can keep going and playing at the highest level. Dan Evans is an interesting one, obviously with his drugs ban. Wimbledon refused to give him a wild card. He's now got in a qualifying. He's been on form, actually. He's been one of the form players on grass. But because of his drugs ban, they went on moral grounds not to give him a wild card to Wimbledon, which I think is a bit wrong. He's trying to redeem himself after his issues, and I think their stance unhelpful, but it is what it is. They were firm with him when he failed his test. They were and the LTA and the Lawn Tennis Association were really, really disappointed when he failed his test, and disappointed in the amount of funding they had put into not just him but all grassroots players. But he's trying to redeem himself. It's a difficult line to judge. But I think with the rising use of recreational drugs amongst sportsmen and women, there has to be a line drawn somewhere between allowing them to redeem themselves and at the same time a firm line saying that this is not acceptable, because these guys and girls are role models for young kids. and we have to be careful on how they they present themselves. I mean, we've seen so much negativity, and there's a lot of mostly in team sports, ironically, of players failing tests to do with recreational drugs in the last 2-3 years, and it's really a shame because they are role models. They are held in high regard. Some of them. They are top level professionals, and it seems to be a trend that's there, and it's in certain sports, mostly in the team sports. That's not to say that golfers don't do it and tennis players don't do it. Obviously, Dan Evans has, and he's not the only one in tennis. There's been a few in tennis, but football, rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey, they seem to have more of an issue, especially the both kinds of rugby with recreational drug use, than it's let on to be you know. Most people realise there is an underlying issue there. It is a minority, but the issue is there, and it's not going away anytime soon, and it's not disappearing and going away anytime soon. It's there. It's an undercurrent, and it's a problem. And various sports bodies are not tackling it head on. They're not saying this, what the tolerance level is, because some of these players have had checkered off-field histories with drink as well, and assault allegations and other issues, legal issues. And it is interesting. Hello, yes. Even things like croquet, there are things because there are certain stimulants that can actually aid concentration. So croquet, you would need a lot of concentration even in a minor sport like that, a really niche sport like that, which involves a lot of mental concentration. If you have Pro Plus or caffeine or nicotine, anything that can increase your concentration levels, that it's really weird that you mentioned. I mean, I used to play croquet at my school because we had a croquet set, and we used to have a little bash around, and it was good fun. But we do it more for fun. But yes, definitely. I mean, there were two Russian curlers or a Russian curler at the Winter Olympics who got done for meldonium doping, which controls your heart rate and helps with concentration. Curling. The issue with recreationals, it's not just performance enhancing, but recreationals is it's it's the social side of it, and what being a pro athlete or a pro sportsman or woman is. It's you are a role model as well as an advert for that sport and the team you play for. Especially in team sports, you are advertising, your club, team, your sport, your league. You're wearing a lot of advertising stuff now. There's a more corporate side to it than there was 20, 30 years ago. There's a lot more ads on football jerseys, rugby jerseys, not North American sports jerseys for the most part. But because of course there will have to be. Some of them will be legal, and a lot of them will be using Pro Plus tablets or caffeine tablets or stuff like that, something to enhance their energy levels. I'm not so sure that they can get away with blood doping like EPO or anything like that. They're not at altitude, so EPO is pointless. They're mostly at sea level. It's to do with the humidity. So anything that can help you with your energy levels and recovery from lactic acid buildup. There will be those that speed up lactic acid removal, and a lot of them are probably totally legal medications. I wouldn't be surprised if yes, there are. What I've noticed, and I don't want to harp on about drug use in sport. I want to talk about the positives that we've seen so far and the negatives in the sense of playing style. But I will cover this because it keeps coming up in every live stream we do. There's always something to do with cheating of some kind. You have to go back to '94 and Diego Maradona and him failing his second drugs test within 2 years. He'd just come off of a drugs ban, and he not only did he have a few performance enhancing things in his system, like Benzodrine or whatever it was, but he had a fair bit of amphetamines and cocaine in his system and other stimulants. It was known, not just Diego Maradona, but in the 80s, 70s through to the 90s, a lot of sportsmen at top level in various sports So you look at the Edmonton Oilers in ice hockey, in the NHL. You look at Maradona in football. A lot of them, there was a big narcotics culture in dressing rooms in team sports. Massive culture of it. Massive issues. I think what we're going to find at this World Cup is there's not as many as you think performance enhancing. FIFA, on this respect, are very tight when it comes to drugs bans from football. Although the Peruvian captain is on a drugs ban and he got it overturned to perform at the World Cup. Ironically, but I think his was for cocaine, or amphetamines, but he was on a drugs ban. I think the bigger issue is going to be recreationals, not performance. Although performance will be there, but because it's a team sport where there are substitutions and there are masking agents as well. But football doesn't have the bigger issue with performance enhancing. Football has a bigger issue with recreationals. It does. It's had an issue with it for 30 years. The amount of football players getting caught for, let's say, blood doping or performance enhancing and masking agents is less than those caught for cocaine, amphetamines, cannabis. Far more football players have issues with alcohol and recreationals than performance enhancing. I'm not saying it isn't there. I'm not saying it isn't there. Several players have been caught for performance enhancing, but the trend is recreationals in football. It's to do with the money they've got. I honestly think, and the way that competition testing is done, most of them do it when they're on injury layoff or on international break. It's the same with rugby league. We saw with rugby league with Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor. I believe it was last year after the Anzac Day test. We've seen it with Sean Kenny-Dowell in rugby league as well. In Australia alone, that's only in Australia. We're not talking about over in the Super League in England where we've had players like Rangi Chase and Zach Arde, but there is a trend, especially in team sports. There are the individuals who will cheat and use steroids and use blood doping and other performance enhancing stimulants to get them over that line, legal or otherwise. But what I've seen in team sports is their individual cases of an individual player going, I want to bulk up and get bigger, or I want to. It's not like institutionalised, the whole team's doing it. The bigger issue is in that dressing room, recreational. But I understand where you're coming from with what you're saying. I understand the questions you're asking. But unless someone else asks it, I want to go back to the World Cup per se, because of what we've seen. The VAR, when it has picked things up, has worked. When it has. Last night in the Serbia game, I don't know if you watched the Serbia game, Mitrovic's rugby tackle by Lichtsteiner and another Swiss defender, I think it was Schär, they literally did a very good, what you would class as a choke tackle from the Irish loose forward textbook, the choke tackle. They double tackle. It's literally a textbook rugby union or rugby league choke tackle where two players have tackled the attacking player. They tackled him to the ground. Very good technically if it was rugby. Both kinds of rugby. It's football, soccer as you would call it. VAR completely missed that. Very similar to the Harry Kane instance against Tunisia the other day. That has, for me, said, okay, VAR, when it is picking things up, is getting the decisions right. But it is still missing a lot of these blatant fouls in the box. Blatant. And they're not going and reviewing it. If that had been reviewed, Switzerland don't win that game. And the Serbs go on and win. Because they were 1-0 up at the time, they were on top. That happens. If that is given as a penalty, I would be no surprise if Nemanja Matic or whoever is the penalty taker for Serbia steps up and slots it past the goalkeeper. And we're talking about Serbia qualifying and Switzerland on the way out. The way that several instances now, it's not just an England thing saying they're biased against us. Serbia is very friendly with Russia, let's just say that, and they didn't get one. So to say that certain games are fixed, no, it's the referees aren't using it correctly. The VAR isn't picking up certain things, and they've completely missed that one. Yes, if you're diving to get a VAR review, you're very likely to get done for diving because they will review it, and you may get yourself in trouble. Hence why Neymar didn't get his penalty. He dived. He was screaming for a penalty. The referee goes upstairs, and there's no contact. He basically sits down. So I think you'll find they might dive less, knowing that they're going to be constantly reviewed about how easily they go over. But we've seen more penalties than in the last World Cup, which was a record at the last World Cup for penalties, which I think was at 10. We're at 12, 13 now. Also, a lot of penalties have been missed, including Iceland and Argentina. Those two countries have missed penalties. Iceland, Sigurdsson puts it over the bar, and Messi, it's saved. We are seeing more goals from set plays. Over half the goals have come from free kicks, corners, or penalties. It would be nice to see more goals from open play. It really, really would. We are seeing a lot of shots from range, though, but the accuracy of shooting is not great. If you look at the accuracy of shooting, it's all over the place. And another trend I've noticed is teams with the most possession aren't always, very few of the teams with a lot of possession are winning, or they're struggling to win. Possession football is not the way to go in this World Cup. I think counter-attack football is the trend, and a few teams have picked that up very quickly. That's why Iceland struggled yesterday. Iceland are used to the counter-attack. They were the ones with the most possession. They lose. Argentina, a lot of possession against Iceland, did not win. Colombia, most possession against Japan, even down at 10 men, lose. Brazil, struggling against Costa Rica, loads of possession. I think possession football may have had its day. The more open, that's why the Portugal-Spain game was brilliant, because it was so open, because one attack, another attack, another attack, another attack. There wasn't like, we're going to have all the ball, we're going to have none of it. It was one of the better games. The Serbia-Switzerland games, the Swiss had a lot of possession at times and were in control. It's one of the few times when the team with the most possession wins, but at times Serbia had a lot of the ball, and it was very open and very end-to-end. If you look at 5-minute segments, far more entertaining than Spain's tiki-taka. Let's keep the ball for 70-80% and struggle to beat Iran, because they could have lost that game against Iran. I think possession football, I think the style is evolving for this World Cup. Fast-paced attack is the way to go. Germany-Mexico was quite good, because Mexico is just an immovable object, and they have a very good chance of going very, very far in the tournament. Although I picked Croatia as my dark horse. Mexico today, playing their second game, have a very, very good chance of winning 2 games and getting through out the group. They look very, very good. And their goalkeeper, Ochoa, very underrated. He's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Doesn't play for top clubs. One of the highest save percentages. 4 years ago, he had the highest save percentage in the French league. And he had saved the most shots and faced the most shots. And his goals against average was pretty good, considering the team Ajaccio he was with got relegated. He was very, very good. He's now playing, I think, for Anderlecht in Belgium. That's a better team in Belgium. He's at a top team in that league, but it's not the highest quality. But he's a bit of an exile. I think he needs to go back into one of the top European leagues. But he's a damn good goalkeeper. Very underrated. Very underrated. Some of the saves he pulled off at the last World Cup were brilliant, and a few of the saves he's pulled off against Germany were brilliant as well. Yes, it can. And it has not been. I mean, the referee last night in the Serbia game was terrible. And I've watched that referee many times before. He's a very good referee. But missing that VAR shout at Mitrovic, the rugby tackled, and some of the tackles going in, he was not. It seemed every time Serbia went for a tackle, dead, but the Swiss weren't. A similar foul play. I don't know if he's reffed some of these Serbian players before in Europe and has a view on their discipline. Obviously, a certain player can get into a referee's bad books very early on. But yes, no, the interesting is the drawing of lots. Yes, I don't think we're going to come to that. I really don't. I do think the games today and then the final group games, you're going to see some teams get blown out. We've already seen several teams already basically having to pack their bags. Salah's already left the Egypt squad and's gone home. So we're going to see some interesting stuff this weekend. A lot of games on, a lot of games. We're going to see some interesting bits and pieces. It all depends. I think it's going to come down to goals for that. I honestly do. I think the goal difference is the first thing to look at. And if that's the same, then you come down to fair play. If that's the same, the goal differential is going to be crucial. And I think the fact you're only -1 is good. It's going to come down to the final game and how many goals both sides score and have scored against. That's what I think it's going to come down. I think that will come down to goal difference by a long way. The fact this Australia side is not the best Australia side we've seen better, but I think the team unity is there, and I think that goes a long way. Is teamwork. It's there. Um, but the '06 side, you had Paducah and Harry Kewell in it, top level players, and Mark Schwarzer in goal. You had some players who were playing in the Premier League. You had some players who were playing in the Bundesliga. Now, less of them, but there are still decent young players in your squad, and there's some good team unity, which I think trumps a lot of the individual skill. That's why I think Neymar and Brazil aren't doing well. There are a bunch of individuals, same with Argentina, a bunch of individuals, no teamwork, no leadership. There's no um, core of players saying, right, let's gather around, guys. This is what's going right, this is what's going wrong. Pulling players together and saying you got to improve here, or we need to, as a team, look at this. It's all individual, and they're trying to, and especially Neymar showboating his skills. Best way to use skills to get out of a tight situation, not to wind up the opposition, because the opposition will do what Colombia did 4 years ago and fracture his spine. They will. And the way he's using his skill is not necessarily in the right time. He is showboating it. Like, he's showboating. Look at me, all my tricks and flicks. Do it when you're under pressure, when you've got 2 or 3 defenders around you, closing you down, trying to restrict where you're going, and then use your skill to get out of trouble. Then you've proven you're a good player. If you're showboating and disrespecting the opposition, they're going to want to break your leg. They're going to want to, knock you on your ass. It's the same. It's the same in ice hockey, rugby league, rugby union. If you start showboating and disrespecting your opposition, doesn't matter what level of the opposition they're at. If they're at the same level or a bit low or wherever it is, they're going to want to hurt you. They're going to want to take your number and go, right, next time he doesn't use a bit of skill, he just passes it off and he's near the edge of the play, I'm going to hit him hard. I don't care if I give away a penalty. I'm going to make sure he feels the contact of my shoulder going into his back. And it happened 4 years ago for Neymar. He was injured out of the tournament because he disrespected the opposition far too much. And he's too petulant anyway. I think a fair few players don't like that kind of showboating. This isn't like a open fan training session where you see the players interacting with the fans and showing off their skill set. This is not an all-star game. This is a competitive match where the opposition are trying to beat you, and to showboat and rub it in their face. Oh, look at my skill set. You're going to get a kick. It's petulant. It's sad. It's disrespectful. It's like Messi just walking straight down the tunnel after the Croatia game and not shaking hands and admitting, okay, we were up late day. He just stormed off. Mascherano personally shouldn't even be in the side. He's past his best. They have got some better players that are not taking off the bench. But Messi, no, he's not. You're not captain. Some players do really well at club level and fail at international level. And Messi's only had one decent tournament at international level, and that was the World Cup 4 years ago. And when people are comparing Ronaldo and Messi, Ronaldo's won an international title. It's called winning the Euros 2 years ago. And even then, both those players come nowhere close to Pele for me. Pele is far better than either of those two. Because Pele, unlike these two showboating prima donnas, he didn't dive. He didn't showboat his skills to disrespect the opposition, and had a great respect for his rivals. You just have to go to the 1970 World Cup and look at the Bobby Moore Pele swapping shirts at full time and having a long conversation. Bear in mind, Pele's first language is not English, and Bobby Moore, not speaking a lot of Portuguese, they still managed to communicate in some way and show respect between two great players who both got their hands on the Gilles Rimet trophy. The weak team thing, I think it's not the 48 teams that is the problem. I honestly think 32 though is the perfect number. I think you can get the perfect sized tournament at 32, but I understand why 48, because there are a lot of good players floating around in countries that haven't qualified. You've got to look at the teams that didn't qualify this time around, like Holland, Chile, the USA. The USA has some structural issues, but they didn't qualify. And it's also good to see some new talent at a tournament. And people said when it was a lot smaller, when it was 16 teams, that 24 was too much. 24 is a bad number to have for a World Cup. I think 48 might work. The groups, they'll be the same amount of groups. It'll just be extra team in each group, pretty much. That's what's going to be it. Apart from that, it's pretty much going to be the same. Just means you get one extra group game. Yeah, Italy, Holland, Chile didn't qualify. That says something about the increased strength in depth in El Salvador in I think 78 or 82. They were the worst team ever. They got beaten like 13-1 or 10-1 in a World Cup group game. I think it was 82 that El Salvador got hammered. But no, that Zaire team, DRC is Democratic Republic of Congo. They were pretty dismal. But Haiti qualified in 74 and did rather well. So occasionally you get these first time qualifiers who do have a decent tournament. And Panama, admittedly, okay, they got beaten 3-0. They're not bad. They want to grow the game in that country. So if you don't have the 48 teams, a lot of these nations never qualify, and then you never get to see some of the talent some of these players actually have. So the one game that people state that they shouldn't have 48 teams at the World Cup was Morocco-Iran. Morocco have underwhelmed completely. I understand that, but Iran getting that win, they're still in their group, and they did push Spain all the way. So, and people say, no, that's the worst game ever. No, I've seen worse. I saw worse at 2010 in South Africa. The South African World Cup was possibly the worst World Cup I've ever seen, followed by the '94 World Cup. The first World Cup I saw was '94. That was terrible. But for me, as a young kid growing up watching it, I didn't know any different. I didn't know that it was, for the purist, one of the worst World Cups ever. But then as I've watched 98, 2002, 2006, I thought 2006 was absolutely amazing because my cousins are half Italian. It was a riot in our house because we were supported by England and Italy. So we ended up with a winner because of our family connections. And also my aunt's Japanese, so we had a Japanese connection as well. So all three countries we were supporting really, all of them got out the groove, and we had some great laughs and entertainment. Obviously, Italy won, and that's how I went out to Italy, and it was a riot. It was the whole summer I was out in Italy. It was beautiful. Everyone was just having a party. It was street parties all over the place. But 2010 was a shocker of a World Cup for quality. It was really poor. 2014, I actually enjoyed 2014. I did. And this one's been decent. For all the criticism of Russia and the issues with fan security, there's been no crown trouble that we know of. If there has been a few arrests, we don't know of it. And there probably has been, but it hasn't been systemic and it hasn't been in your face. Partly because I think the Russian team are doing well. If the Russian team weren't doing so well, we might see a bit more trouble. But so far, it's doing really well. The '86 World Cup, I have a lot of information. I've got DVDs on it, and I've got DVDs and videos on every World Cup from '66 to '86, and I've got 2006 on DVD as well. Obviously, I wasn't alive in '86. It was 3 years before I was born, but I have seen a lot of the footage from that World Cup just before I was born, and there were some entertaining scenes there. But what we're seeing at this World Cup is so far every game has had a goal, and there's been no 0-0 draws. So if someone's saying, "Oh, that was a boring game," there's been no 0-0s. There's been a lot of action, last-minute goals, penalties, free kicks. And yes, they are experimenting with this VAR, and it hasn't always got it right. If you look at Serbia's game last night and England's game against Tunisia, clear penalty miss there. I don't know what the directive is. I don't know. But they also don't seem to be booking as many players when they should. I mean, Otamendi was lucky to stay on the field against Croatia with that deliberate, cynical kick to the head of Rakitic with the football. And he left his foot in as well, well after the whistle. And then he committed a few more fouls later on. Otamendi was very lucky not to get sent off. The fact we've only seen one red card so far in the tournament is telling. I didn't get to see the Brazil game because I was at work. I missed the Brazil game, but I finished work shortly after I got home for the last two games. Hence why the videos are up on the channel. I'm not reviewing games that I don't watch. I can't give a fair review on what I haven't seen. Which I know people are going to go, why didn't you cover the Brazil game? I didn't watch it, so I can't say how well Neymar. I've seen the highlights of Neymar throwing himself to the floor like a rag doll, and it's embarrassing. There's a reason why he's not very well liked in footballing circles. It's because he's a petulant child. Um, yeah, but if the game isn't on BBC, if it's on ITV, then it's a pain in the arse. So I've got to get you can get it on ITV Player if it was on ITV, and you can get it on BBC iPlayer. Um, I would say this. I'm not going to rewatch a game that was on yesterday. I'll catch the highlights, and yes, they do show bits and pieces, and I can comment on. Well, that was embarrassing. And Neymar's flop for that attempted penalty was cringe. I did have my phone on me for updates, so I got all the updates saying there's been a penalty miss, it's not been given, there's been this and that, but I didn't see how Brazil performed. They had a lot of the ball and didn't score till really late on. If that game, let's say, has a bit less injury time, they may not have won that game. Um, that's how fine line it is because there was that much added time because of Neymar's histrionics. If Neymar stays on his feet a lot more and actually tries to score the goal, or tries to get other players in, then there may be less added time for his prattling about and the VAR review because that goes on to added time as well. That's another issue. People are saying the VAR is working when it does pick up things, but for me, from what I know from English football when they were doing it in the FA Cup and the limited knowledge I have of the German trial, they're trying to keep it under a minute for a review. What they should do, and this is what football should do, is every time there is a breaking play, stop the watch. Stop the watch. Don't let the time carry on so you get added time at the end, because added time at the end is where Brazil got their win against Costa Rica. If you do it like rugby where you stop the watch, and when it hits 90 minutes, the whistle goes and that's it. Brazil do not win that game against Costa Rica. The only reason why they actually got enough added time was because Neymar's flopping about to get the VAR review and a few other bits and pieces. All the stoppages for slow substitutions. I will say that's one thing I would change possibly is when there is a breaking play, especially a lengthy injury break where there could be like the Iceland game with the head injury with the player clearly had a gash in his head after Nigeria's first goal by Ahmed Musa, the Sigurdsson, the defender, not Gylfi Sigurdsson, Ragnar Sigurdsson. His head split open. There's a fair bit of blood coming out of his head, and he's on the floor for a good 4 minutes, maybe longer, being assessed. And they were being very, very careful. The Icelandic medical team were being very, very careful about a head injury, which was good to see. He played on for like 10 minutes and then he came off. He was clearly not right. Whether he plays in the final group game, we'll see. But after the Moroccan player getting concussed and clearly knocked out and playing a week later, I think they've got concussion protocols all wrong in world football. I know there'll be those who in America and Australia call it soccer, but they need to look better at the concussion protocol, really, because that Moroccan player who got knocked out in the opening game against Iran shouldn't have played in the second game, but did. And it was good to see the medics. He was trying to get back on, and they said, "No, mate, you're not coming back on." But he didn't even know what day it was. He plays. He was in hospital for 2 days, which is shocking. And the Icelandic player, his head split open. He's clearly got accidental. When Musa scores and turns away, he doesn't realise he's clipped him with his knee and his boot, and he split his head open. Unintentional knock, but because he was on the ground. That's why I felt when Otto Mendy did what he did against Rakitic when he boots the ball with his head and leaves his foot in, he was lucky to stay on. He should have gone. That was deliberately intent to injure. And this is where I think keeping the cards in the pocket or restraining from giving that red, they've got to go. The referees have got to stop relying on VAR to pick these things up and actually go and ref. They would normally ref in a league game without VAR. But yes, also the missing of the penalties from the penalty spot. There's been several. It is surprising, but again, you got to look at the heat and the humidity. Everyone's saying, "Oh, it's Europe. It doesn't get that hot and humid." It really bloody does. The other night we were at, and it hasn't been hot, but we're expecting a heat wave here in the UK over the next next couple of days. Beginning over this weekend, it's going to hit 30, and over next week, it's going to go up and up and up. We could have a long heat wave. Which coverage do I prefer so far? BBC or I actually prefer the BBC because I can't stand the adverts and I can't stand the ITV punditry team is over bloated. Eni Aluko, what's she doing there? I have no idea why Eni Aluko is comment because she does my nut. I'm not a big fan of some of the. I'm not a fan of Rio Ferdinand, although he did do a very good documentary before the Brazil World Cup, and I will say that. But he does do his social documentaries, and he is decent, but his punditry is not great. I'm liking the fact they've got Zabaleta and Fabregas in the BBC. That gives a non-English perspective, and Drogba as well. I'm very liking that fact because they give that non-English perspective of players who've played in England but who represent other countries at international level. That's really interesting to see. Danny Murphy always looks depressed, but he's actually when talking about the media issues with England's team selection being leaked, he was brutally honest as a player. The presenter who's not Gary Lineker, I forget his name. Oh, it's going to piss me off. He was asking really stupid questions, and Danny Murphy was going to lose his temper. You could see Danny Murphy was going to lose his temper and say, "No, seriously, you're told to talk to the media." I would like to see more players actually be more themselves rather than being this manufactured media questioning. I would say, without swearing, I like players to actually have this is how I really feel. But we'll see. Yes, Australia do have a specialist penalty taker in Jedinak, but what happens if he's injured and let's say he's in the box, he gets tackled, his knee blows out? You've always got to have several players who are willing to take the pressure situations. A lot of teams do specialise with one or two players on a set piece. I think you need to have more than two options because if both those players are off the field at the time and you have a penalty, what do you do? I've never lived in North America, but I've been following the NHL and ice hockey in general since 1992. So I'm not as good as other channels. There's another channel that I follow. There's two channels that I follow that are to do with ice hockey, which is Post to Post, which is decent content. But they have a whole studio set up and they have a very good Patreon link and they have 3 channels and I follow the hockey guy. The way they do it, because they live in Canada and they have easier access to the NHL media and the sports media out there to do with that particular sport, it's harder for me over here in the UK, but I've never lived in North America. I have a lot of friends who have. I've got a lot of family who have, and I have a friend who's moving back to North America in the at the end of the next week. So I do know people who have spent a lot of time in the US and Canada, but it's interesting because I follow it religiously. People forget over here in the UK we have the Elite League, which is the top level, and the National League, which is the secondary level. We've had issues with some of the league structures over the last while. Our Premier League, which was the second tier, has gone out of business because a team went bust, which is an issue that regularly happens. And we've had another team go under this summer in the Elite League. But we have a good level of hockey in this country. And Liam Kirk, obviously, in the entry draft, he'll be drafted, I think, round 3 to round 5. But he's in there. Whether he actually ever plays a game at the NHL level is another thing. But the fact he's done the combine, he did well at the combine, and he's in the draft is good. Ben O'Connor is now in the Swedish Hockey League. He was going to go to the KHL, and then for some reason that deal went tits up after about 2 hours. So yeah, he was a KHL player for 2 hours. Ben O'Connor, he's now in the SHL. Both these players played for Sheffield, the Steelers, and Sheffield is a hockey mad city. They have 2 teams. Yeah, you got the Steelers and the Steel Dogs. They've got 2 rinks. One of them is massive, and one's not so big. You would call them arenas. Sheffield is one of the hotbeds of British ice hockey. My team play in the second level at the moment, although with the way the team's been put together this summer, we have some good squad, and I think the plan is to eventually go up a level. But we need our home rink needs a lot of improvement, which is a pain in the arse. Money that the sport in this country doesn't have. But it is interesting having the conversation with people who are surprised that the UK has as many hockey fans as we do, and the depth in players that we do. There are some really good. It is really interesting that people forget that we've had the Super League ice hockey, which was the first professional league from '96 to 2003, and my team Bracknell Bees won that 2000, the regular season. We didn't win the playoffs, though, which is a bit of a pain in the arse, but we won the regular season. We won and we have a different style. Where North America, they have playoffs after the regular season. We have a cup competition in regular season as well. So there's an extra trophy to play for. There's an extra award to play for, which is really, really interesting. But we don't have a draft system. We don't have the hockey teams here have a youth system where they will produce the youth and coach the youth from the age of 5 all the way up to the senior team. Whereas obviously in North America, their structures are you have junior hockey, and then you have minor league and obviously the NHL. It's a different culture. The local clubs are where the teams have the youth level teams and they develop all the way up. North America, they have junior level teams and then they don't have that top levels in the same club. It's different. So North America is a weird sporting culture compared to the rest of the world when it comes to youth development of players. My top 5 sports. Let me go back to maybe you say yeah, no. Moy for Huddersfield is a good set piece taker. He can whip in a free kick. He's a box to box midfielder, underrated, I think. And yeah, he could take him. I would think several Australian players could give it a wallop. Tim Cahill, if he gets on, could be a penalty taker as well. If you were to give him a run out, Tim Cahill could definitely take a penalty. I've seen him do it for Millwall and Everton in his time, so he's a very good set play specialist as well. Top 5 sports. I mean, I've watched. Ice hockey is my favourite sport by a long way, and I would follow it with rugby league, rugby union, cricket. Yeah, I'll get cricket in there, and I'll probably put football outside my top 5. I really would. I'll probably put saloon car racing, motorsport, not F1, but I'll put NASCAR, saloon car racing, so stock saloon car racing in there. I like watching the Aussie V8 supercars. I like watching the British touring cars, and I like watching NASCAR because it is wheel to wheel, and they are allowed to race full throttle for 100% of the time. But I don't mind football. I'm loving the World Cup because you get to see players that you wouldn't normally see for the rest of the next 4 years or 2 years because club sides it's very tribal. But yes, Wade Bellac, yes, he did play over here. And yeah, a lot of NHL players have played in England, especially during the 2 lockouts in my life. Well, the 3 lockouts really, but the 2 05 and I think 2013, the 2 last lockouts in the NHL. A lot of players came over from various teams. Some didn't stay very long. Some stayed the whole season, especially the 04-05 lockout. That's when a lot of NHL and 2-way AHL, NHL players came over. A lot of them, and some decided to after their time in the NHL to go back to the teams they played for in Europe. And it wasn't just Britain; it was all over the Europe. But this is when the Elite League was in its infancy, and the British Super League had just gone out of business. So the British National League, which then became the EPIHL, sort of evolved. The 2 professional leagues were reforming. There was issues with the structure of the game in the UK, and to have those players come over at that time was crucial into the future development of what the game is now. It helped the Elite League grow, and it spelled the end of the British National League, which was struggling anyway, and it caused the rise of the English EPIHL, which only went out of business last year. So it sort of changed the dynamic, and it improved. I think having that lockout whole season really improved British ice hockey because we got to see NHL players, maybe not the top NHL players, but we saw NHL players who still wanted to play, and they weren't in it for the money. They were in it because they enjoy the sport. Doesn't matter if they're an enforcer, third pair defenseman, healthy scratch type players. They came over and they played, and they were playing against men. Okay, admittedly there was a talent gap, but they were there and they were like, we want to play. And the British players, because we have a rule on how many overseas players we can have. They were willing to be an overseas player, and they were willing to take a pay cut. Some of them were free agents, and they were willing to play for free. Some of them, because the money wasn't there, and they'd obviously saved up their cash, came over and were willing to play for a lot less money or for nothing, and play. And for me, as a teenager, like seeing just anyone who's worn an NHL jersey, lace up and play for my team and against my team, was something that we don't get to see every day over here. Yes, Wade Belak, yes, he did play over here. I didn't see him much when he was playing over here, but yes, he did come over and he did have a good point per game ratio. I'm going to quickly check him out. I'm going to quickly check out Wade Belak, because you've piqued my interest, because I swear he's played against my team, and I swear he played for my team. That's going to annoy me now. But let's have a look at Wade Belak, because it is sad that he is. It's not just that he's an enforcer. It's sad that again a lot of players are dying young. It's not just enforcers. It is generally. Let's have a look. See, well, he played for Coventry. That's what he played for. No, okay, he played for Coventry. Let's have a look at, because it's interesting, because he did have a lengthy career. It wasn't as if he was just a pure enforcer. He did actually have a bit of upside to him. He could help out when needed, which is where. When did he play for them? I'm trying to work out when he played for Coventry now. This is really, really annoying. I'll have to dig through and have a look. Yeah, he did come over in the 2004-2005 lockout, but in 42 games he got 7 goals and 17 points in 42 games, so he wasn't quite a point per game guy, but he had 178 penalty minutes in 48 games. But in the playoffs, he got a goal and 2 points in 8 games, and he did get the All-Star in that season, and they went back to the Maple Leafs. He actually had less penalty minutes for the Maple Leafs the season after than he did for the Coventry Blaze, so he obviously either got more ice time, but he helped that team. He was willing to come over, play for less money, and he obviously got more ice time and more shift time, but it's because he's been playing at a high level. He can train at a higher level. His fitness is at a higher level, and he would have probably shown the training side of things, how to stay, raise the fitness levels with the training regime of a higher level, higher league. But now the fact we're seeing Ben O'Connor go to the KHL, well, go to the SHL, and Liam Kirk, he's probably going to end up in the CHL, but Liam Kirk going into the draft. What happened in that lockout 14 years ago is having an effect right now, where some of these young kids who are a bit younger than me, maybe, or maybe my age, some of these players are feeling the benefits of either watching and being part of the youth setups around the main squads and being on those two-way contracts and being inspired to, play better. They see how these top-level professionals, they may not be the star players, but top-level professionals, how they train, how their fitness levels are higher, their intensity levels are higher, their skill level. Even for an enforcer, he didn't score many goals, but he scored goals in playoffs. He made the All-Star team in that league, so the league voted him one of the All-Stars, and clearly the fans loved him. And it is sad that he passed away young, and he's not the first, and he won't be the last. It's not just in ice hockey that sportsmen, some of them have tragic short lives. There's been a lot of sportsmen and some sportswomen who've died exceptionally young when not even in their 40s. It does happen. It could be the wear and tear in their bodies. It's not just concussion; it's it's the wear and tear on your internals and your joints and all sorts and there is that. Like the Maple Leafs themselves. Now I'm a Jets fan, so if you follow my channel and you look at some of my videos, you can see I'm wearing a lot of Jets gear. So I'm going to be debating whether who's the best team in Canada right now. But I will say this: what Lou Lamoriello did while he was there, I don't agree with the way they handled his departure as GM with the new guy, Jubas, coming in, Carl Jubas. He's gone straight to the Islanders, which is a Eastern rival. He's managed to nick Barry Trotz as coach, and they're going to try to keep on Tavares at the Islanders. The Maple Leafs, they have drafted well. Brendan Shanahan has got some kind of long-term plan, or have they? This is the concern I have because Lou Lamoriello was brought in when the Maple Leafs were an absolute shambles. And what's come out last season with Joffrey Lupul saying that they are deliberately cheating the cap by keeping him on long-term injured reserve when he's fit enough to play. Whether he ever plays again, I doubt he ever plays again. But that wasn't great when that all came out. But it is what it is. I can see them regularly get into the playoffs. It's whether they can get out the first round, get to the second, get to the conference final, or make it to the Stanley Cup final, because it has been a long time. With the league expanding, and there's going to be another expansion draft, and we know it's going to be Seattle. We know Seattle are going to be the 32nd team. There's going to be another expansion draft. I think Vegas have more protections in that expansion draft, but that means players will have to be given up, and you're going to have to protect players again. And you're going to be close to the salary cap by 3 years' time. So when Seattle come in, depending on how the Maple Leafs have done and how Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and co do, I think Matthews is a bit behind Patrick Laine in development a little bit. I think he's not kicked on as well as he could have. Patrick Laine's got more points. He's played more games. He's got more goals. And Laine is not the creative player. He's the finisher. Austin Matthews is more the creative player. So that says to me there's a bit of a worry about a few bits of Matthews' game. Well, that's the media pressure. And I will put that out to media pressure. I think he has had a few injuries. But I'm being honest. I don't want to knock your team. I don't. But there are Leafs fans out there who think every year they're going to win the cup and they're delusional and they need to be given sedatives. And I say that kindly. As a guy who supports the underdog, I'm used to my teams not always winning the title or being in contention. So I'm used to being more calm about my teams' prospects. But no, this is why I don't watch Steve Dangle anymore. I used to love watching Steve Dangle as a YouTuber, and I've gone off him because he's like that minority Leaf fans that make me want to have a brain tumor. This is why I like watching the hockey guy or post to post, because yes, they support their teams and they'll be happy. So I like this team. These are my favourite teams. These are my least favourite teams. This post to post, they're Canadians fans, and they don't even live in Montreal. They live in Prince Edward Island, and the hockey guy, not only does he support Vancouver, but he also follows Boston and Dallas. He's nowhere close to those cities. He lives in British Columbia, and I like the way that they do their content. I think I would now probably class the hockey guy as a pen pal, because I've sent him a few packages, I've sent him a couple of jerseys, I've sent him some of my memorabilia. I email him occasionally, I comment on all of his videos, and I respect his view on the sport. In 3 years' time, or within that 3 year period, there is going to be another expansion draft. There is going to be a new team joining. I don't 100% know how Vegas is going to deal with that, because that's another team to look at. But that could affect if you keep Mitch Marner or Van Riemsdyk or some of these other young players coming through, because you've got to choose which ones to protect and not protect. And you've now got a GM who is young, who isn't Lou Lamoriello, and Lou Lamoriello has been running a lot of expansion drafts, and you lost that experience when it comes to this kind of situation. And that's going to be interesting how they handle that. I think they will be regularly in the playoffs. They've got to work on a few issues, get a defenseman, maybe a decent backup goaltender. McElhinney can do it, but Anderson showed in the playoffs he had some moments, and they've got to keep, look at Matthews and Marner and go, why was Mitch Marner on the fourth line at times this season, and why was Matthews not always producing at the rate that Patrick Laine was? Now, injuries will have played a part. He was injured a few times. He's been injured a lot, and that's worrying at someone so young. Laine's had 2 injuries. Matthews has had 4 or 5 injury layoffs. But Patrick Laine's second injury just got a puck in the foot, and he was only out 2 weeks, and he was out 4 days. And he clearly was playing hurt towards the end of the season, which obviously meant Ovechkin won the Rocket Richard, which is annoying. And he wasn't quite himself in the playoffs because I think he still had a sore foot, but he wasn't as badly hurt as Matthews with some of his concussions. Matthews has had several concussions already, which is concerning for me. But I'm not a Leafs fan, and I'm not going to try and belittle your side. I'm more interested in my Jets. It's going to be interesting though, because you've got more cap space than you. That's the difference. You have more money to spend because you make more money. You're one of the wealthiest sports teams in the world. You are the biggest fan base in ice hockey, but you're closer to the cap. We have a lot more space. That's the difference, is how you handle the salary cap. Yes, we know it's going to be between 78.5 and 80 million US dollars, but you are a lot closer to it than we are. And you have a lot more young players who are coming off their entry-level contracts at the same time who are going to be restricted free agents with arbitration rights that we don't have. So I'm just comparing 2 teams that both got to the playoffs, who both play in Canada, who both play in blue. I don't know what it is with him and Babcock, because Babcock has won Stanley Cups and and he got Detroit to the playoffs every season he was there, and he worked at the Anaheim Ducks, and he's, as a coach, he's improved the Toronto side. He is a playoff making coach. Whether he's won a few trophies as well, let's not forget that, but he will get your team to the playoffs. Matthews, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't have enough knowledge on the inner workings of the Maple Leafs because I'm not a Maple Leafs fan. I will be honest with my fandom and my non-fandom. So as a non-Maple Leafs fan, as a fan of other teams, it did come out that Matthews and Babcock weren't always buddies. But here's the thing: no coach is always going to 100% get along with his players. We've seen it in sports like here in the UK with Guardiola and Yaya Toure, and how Yaya Toure is basically saying he could be a bit racist. He doesn't like African players. And there was that debate, and how other players would come out and said, yeah, Guardiola likes players who basically grovel to him and, lick his bumhole. Mourinho in Man United. So if you look at different sports, are having fractious relationships with players. It happens. Babcock Matthews, I think, is a bit more of a non-event. I do. I think Matthews is the way the North American sports system works. It's completely different to the European and South American sporting culture, where you have the youth set up and you go through the youth ranks and the age level ranks in your team, and we have transfers rather than the trades. The whole sporting culture is different because Matthews was developed by down in Arizona, and he went through the junior hockey system where he doesn't have a direct link to the Maple Leafs. So they haven't charted his development from day one, in the sense that they haven't been directly involved with coaching at youth level. He then gets drafted. He's never played for the affiliates of the Maple Leafs, like the Toronto Marlies. So he's only ever played with the Maple Leafs at the top level. That's what he's played. 2 seasons now? Is it 2 seasons? Yeah, it's 2 seasons since he was. Yeah, he's played 2 full seasons with injuries in there, but he's played 2 full seasons. It is interesting. Whereas over here in Europe, if we have a player, he's probably been with that team since he was 5 years old on the youth setup, and he's worked his way through the age grades until first team level or professional level, because some of the youth teams are part-time and they allow the players to, work and go to school. And sometimes they help them with their schooling. And then when they get to 17, 18, 19, 20, then they start giving them first team game time. They allow them around the senior squad or the reserve squad. Yeah, and then they give them, drip feed them into the starting lineup. And because the club have been involved from day one with that player's development, they know what his strengths and weaknesses are from day one. Intimately, they know about his family life, how he feels, how he interacts with the other age players of his age group. It's all different. So I think this is a bit of a non-event. Players and coaches will disagree on tactics occasionally, and some players may be frustrated that they're not getting the game time that they think they deserve. But he has been injured a few times this season. He has missed a quarter of the season, nearly, with injury. He may feel frustrated that maybe he's been rushed back or he hasn't come back soon enough. Babcock may be frustrated with, okay, you're not producing right now. We're going to be paying you a lot of money next year with the first overall draft pick. We expect more from you. And this does happen with first overall draft picks. Occasionally they do. Sometimes think, I'm the best player of my age group or my draft class. I'm the best when they haven't won anything. I don't know. It's a difference of opinion on a sporting matter. If they get on away from the sporting environment where they go, look, that's work. Now we're resting. We're having a meal as work colleagues. That's completely different. But it's how the culture is different. So if you look at where I'm coming from, a friend of mine I went to school with, he's now playing professional rugby union at Bath. My mate Max, I haven't seen him for over a decade, mind, but I was schoolmates with him. He went into the London Welsh Academy for 6 months. Then he went to London Irish, which is the local team for where I live in England, because they play in Reading, and I live just east of Reading in England. And then, he was put through their academy. He then made his so he's done school age, because this is how it's different, a little bit. When it comes to certain sports, when you're at school, you can get scouted when you like in your teenage years, and then they bring you in, or you get scouted younger when you're at lower level, when you play Sunday league and youth league. But he was scouted as a schoolboy. He went into one academy. It wasn't working out, or whatever reason they couldn't, develop him enough. He went to another academy, a rival club. He ended up going up the structure, making his professional debut, playing there for a long period of time. Then he goes over to Australia because he's got dual nationality. He can play for England or Australia. But to represent Australia, you've got to play in Australia. To represent England, you've got to play in England. So he went to Australia, and it didn't quite work out, which I find weird because he's a prop. And therefore, Australia need props. He stayed there for a year. He then comes back and he signs with Bath. He's been with Bath ever since. I followed his career from day one. Ironically. But that's how the difference in player development is. That's all I was getting at. I was using an example of a player that I know in a sport that I know, who I followed. Well, I went to school with him, and it's different. But the Austin Matthews thing, I think it comes down literally to a personal opinion on game time, or maybe there's something not quite right with tactics, and it does happen. And not every dressing room is a harmonious. Everyone holds hands and sings Hallelujah. I will tell you now, as a amateur rugby player for a while, not everyone in our dressing room spoke to each other. Some of us really hated each other. I personally was the new guy to the team, and I was doing it to keep fit and as a hobby, really, whilst I was at college, to keep my fitness levels up and motivate me to get back into work. But I noticed there was dislike between some people. When I got called up to the first team, yes, the big boys, like shit. Two guys that actually hate each other both said high praise about my effort and energy levels that I put in just to make it. So I got called up. So it's interesting, but it's all dynamics. If we look at Germany, I think, I don't know with Germany. Khedira isn't a bad player, but he's not fully fit. You could tell he wasn't 100% right, and I think that's wear and tear. But you've got to look at this German team. They play a lot of Champions League football, which is extra games. You've got to look how many Champions League games you play a season. Same with playoffs in ice hockey in the NHL. Work it out that. So they play a lot of games, a lot of extra game time on top of a regular season. You've got to work out, okay, you've got the German Cup, which Frankfurt won this year. I'm going to be on that. And that was very, very popular. It still continues to be very popular on the channel. And then you've got to work out, international as well. That's a lot of sport. That's a lot of wear and tear. And he's still reasonably young. Most of the Champions League are not even in their 30s yet. And a few of them are pushing 30 now, but they've been together since 2000. Some have been since 2006, and some have come through 2010, 12, and they've had a good call together. Some of them, though, have played a hell of a lot of football. Manuel Neuer hasn't played for most of the season, so I'm really surprised he was straight away your captain again. He's played 5 games this season. That's chronic, and he's had a foot injury as a goalkeeper. We've got to do a lot of goal kicking with a broken foot. I mean, come on. I would have had Ter Stegen in goal personally. I don't think Khedira is the whole problem. They weren't great when they took him off. Let's be honest here. I think Ozil, he's a hit and miss player. It's all down to confidence with him. When he's on form, he's brilliant. Muller was played out of position. They played him out wide rather than up the middle. Mario Gomez was brought on too late. If you want to have fast, pacey wingers who are going to cross the ball in, if there's no one in there to head the bloody ball at the back of the net, there you go. You could say Sane and Goetze not being selected are coming back to bite Germany. I'm not saying that Khedira is just the problem, but I don't think he's 100% fit. And he has played a hell of a lot of football, Champions League football, on top of league football. And then, depending on if you've got a League Cup or an FA Cup kind of style, in whatever league you play in, that as well. And internationals, it all adds up. Plus, Germany's form coming into this World Cup was atrocious. After they qualified, they didn't do well in the friendlies. Terrible. And so it's interesting. I don't know what you do there. I'm not saying that Germany aren't gonna progress, but here's the thing: you look at the last couple of World Cups, the champions from the World Cup before. Yeah, this is interesting. Spain don't get out of the group. Italy don't get out of the group. The tournament winners from the tournament before don't qualify from the group. It's a trend. It's a trend. Germany didn't look great in the first game. The chances of getting out of the group after losing your first group game are low. They're not impossible, but they are lower. So, yeah, well, you look at Spain 4 years ago, they got hammered in the opening game by Holland, or crashed out in the group, and Italy in 2010 didn't get out of the group. So, there's a trend there of winning a title and then struggling to defend it. I can see that happening again. I think not taking Sane and Goetze is a mistake. Yeah, France, Senegal, it's happened. Italy, did get out of the group in 2010, but France 2002, yeah, that is definitely the prime example of a team that hasn't been right since. The French national side has not been right since 2000, 2004. 2002, they just had a bad tournament. We'll put it out, they had a bad tournament. 2004, they did rather well in the Euros. They did decently. 2006, they got to the final. Since 2006, the French national side has not been a happy team to be a part of. It's not been a happy team. A lot of divisions. Look at 2010, the players go on strike. Since 2006 onwards, the French national side has been not a happy place. It hasn't been a positive environment to work in. So if you are selected for the French national side, you might as well just break your leg now, because the divisions within that squad are rampant. I don't know if it's to do with Didier Deschamps. I don't know if it's to do with individual players hating each other. But as I say, it's very rare that a whole group 100% like each other. I wouldn't be surprised if in this England side, thankfully there's no Arsenal players in it, because it's dominated with Tottenham players, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are rivalries between players in that England squad. Would not be surprised. A lot of them are based in London as well, in London clubs. So you've got Loftus-Cheek, who's played this season at Palace. You've got a lot of Tottenham players. You've got a few Chelsea players. I would not be surprised if there's a rivalry between those. Then you've got the Man United players and a couple of Man City players. It's going to be a rivalry there. So we'll see. Jogi Löw, though, he's been a very good coach. and he has been involved with the development of a lot of these players at youth level because they have a direct involvement between under 21s and the senior side, the under 17s, under 19s, under 20s, between top to the youth level. They do have a lot of, working together. And he was an assistant to Klinsmann. He takes over from Klinsmann, wins the Confederations and the World Cup. And there's a reason why Germany's blueprint is working so well. I don't think the players are losing respect for Jogi Löw. He's not the only person who also does the selection because Miroslav Klose and Oliver Bierhoff are still involved with the setup as well. They are still there. So they get ex-players who may have been coached by Klinsmann and Löw into the coaching setup. So they have a good working relationship with certain players like Miroslav Klose. He is in as an assistant. When Jogi Löw goes, I think it's on Bierhoff as manager, followed by Klose as assistant manager. And that's, I think, how their trend is. They're not going outside the Germany camp to look for a replacement. They think their blueprint for success works. And to be fair, it has. They've got to more finals and semi-finals than any other nation in the World Cup. They have a great record in tournament football. There was a blip in the late 90s, early noughties where it wasn't working. And they had enough players at the top level to still be competitive in 2002 at the World Cup, get to the final. But they looked at their youth development and the disconnect, and they changed the structure of German football from the academy all the way to the first team. And it's been successful ever since. You cannot tell me that German team hasn't been a juggernaut and getting far and being consistent. They've had a wobbly start, but Mexico have good players. Everyone's saying wait for the underdog. No, it's a very even matchup if you look at it. If you really look at it, the Mexican league is far stronger than the MLS. But it's Latin American football. There's Mexican players playing all over the world at top level. It's a football mad country. They've now found out they've got a World Cup in 80's time, so that's going to be motivating these players to go, look, we can develop something now for down the road. They have a game plan, and they adapted well to the conditions. I don't think the Germans adapted well to the conditions either. The heat and humidity did them as well. A lot of these Mexicans, when they're brought up as their kids, it gets very hot in Mexico. They play at altitude as well, some of them. And some of these Mexicans still play in Mexico. They're playing at altitude. They're playing in heat. They're used to it. The Germans, not so much. But the build-up for the World Cup for Germany wasn't great. And you've got to go, okay, yeah, they're friendlies, but you should win those friendlies. And you should, as a younger player or a fringe player, pick your hand up and say, I want to get in that squad. And some of these younger German players are technically brilliant. And they are promising, but they're not quite polished, finished article. And I think that's another issue they've got is they haven't got that experienced fringe player who's been in and out the side, but has been as a solid club player. They've got these young, exciting players that aren't fully rounded yet, and that's an issue as well. But they won a World Cup with that kind of setup, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting how they do today. But the first game is Belgium-Tunisia. And it depends, again, I'm going to look at Belgium here. The way they played against the first half against Panama was slow, plodding, and, I missed it because I was at work, but I got in from work, and I see the second half, and it's completely different. We'll see. Spain haven't really had to make the wholesale changes after 4 years ago. They didn't. They just phased out some because Diego Costa played 4 years ago and was nullified up front. He's back and he's scoring. I wouldn't say clear out the team. It's the Germans are very good at reviewing everything. German efficiency, and it's a traditional thing. It's a thing. The Germans are very, very good at looking at every single match and reviewing it fine-tooth comb. I think they need to be a little bit less overcoaching, a little bit in attack, just be free. They have the pace in Miller, and they have the creativity to do it. I do think some of their players are looking tired. They should maybe give some of their younger players a run out today. Give some of their younger players a bit of game time, and say, right, okay, you did well at and they did well at the Confederations Cup. They did. It's a different tournament. It's a smaller tournament, but it's a good warm up for the World Cup because you're playing in the same conditions, you're playing in the same stadiums, you have to deal with the same travel issues. So for the Germans, I think they should possibly put one or two of their youngsters and say, "Right, you give us a performance then. You show us what you're capable of. Give us something to give me a bit of a conundrum." Because Jurgen Löw has, I think, his contract runs until 2020 at the least. So, and if they were to get rid of him, that's a lot of compo because he's been there a very long time. So he's got his reward bonuses. There'll be things in his contract saying for each year you stay and stay on, more money that the Deutsche Marker, the Euro, well, it used to be Deutschmarks. I wish it was Deutschmarks, not the bloody Euro, I can tell you that. He would get. And it's interesting, but the federation in Germany is very good at youth development, which is complete opposite to England. This is where we need to look at the German model and go, okay, it's working. They are playing Sweden today. It's going to be Sweden-Germany games are always good. You just look back in the history books; they're always good at World Cups. The '74 game in the World Cup, Germany were behind in that, and it got to 2-2, and it was right at the end of the game that they went on to win. It took. So you have to look at the history books and go, Sweden, always up their game for the Germans. They always do. So look for that to be a real 1974. You just go on YouTube and go into World Cup All Goals World Cup 1974, and you have to look at the Sweden-Germany game because Germany have to come from behind, then they get into the lead, and then they get pegged back to 2-2, and then it's the last 5-10 minutes of the second half that they finally get the win, and they are made to work for it. And the Swedes up their game, and the Germans are looking nervous. And I think that's the same thing will apply today. The Swedes will up their game. They're coming off a win. So they're already in a better position mentally going, we win today, we're through. Germans have to win today to definitely guarantee themselves a chance of getting through. Pressure's on Germany. Now, so far, they've done very well with the pressure situations. I don't think the coaching staff necessarily has to change. I don't think wholesale changes have to change because the system has worked well for 14 years, even before the 2006 World Cup. It's been in place for a long time now, and it has been proven to be a really good system that works and produces and gets the players ready for international football. And that's to do with the club country debate. It doesn't seem to happen in Germany. The clubs and the federation work very well together. England, however, don't. The US, it doesn't either. So when you have a club country debate, when people were saying, they would rather see their club side do well than their country. In Germany, yes, they want their club sides to do well. And for most of the last decade, it's been Munich, but that's starting to change as well. And I think that's another issue that this German side are having to deal with is Munich have over-dominated the Bundesliga. You need your Wolfsburgs, your Schalkes, your Dortmunds, your Leverkusens. Hanover have got up there. Hamburg have decided to implode and get relegated. But you need your Stuttgarts, your Dresdens and your Leipzigs and all your other teams that have had really good, improvement. Mönchengladbachs have a bit of history. Mix it up a bit because when Bayern Munich weren't dominating the German side, they were also winning. But because Bayern Munich has been the dominant side for the best part of a decade, that's causing a bit of friction as well because there are some very good German players who don't play for Munich. And I think the German league needs Munich to stop winning. Their heavy defeat in the cup final to Eintracht Frankfurt could be a sign that it's changing, and it needs to, because that will really help that roster then. When you have a lot of players and a lot of teams competing for the title, you have a lot of players competing to get into the national side as well. And it's good to have different styles get in there. So that's something that they will be looking at going, okay, there are starting to be challenges to Munich now. Apart from Dortmund and Wolfsburg, it has been Munich for the league for the most part. But it's good to see Schalke and Frankfurt, Mönchengladbach, Leipzig. Leipzig is a team you should watch out for next season. But yeah, they're teams that I think need to and deserve to possibly get some silverware. Cricket World Cup, well, we've seen with the 50-over form of the game that they can break an ODI record for runs set. They did that both in men's and women's in the space of like a day. In the short formats of the game, they both managed to get run records for their formats. But England did lose to Scotland. and we're embarrassed. So consistency, I think, is the thing. Um, we have to see how they do. I still think the Indians. We've got to see how England play against India later this summer, in a couple of months. That's going to be the Test series that, and the one-day series attached to it, that really shows us if England have enough strength and depth to win it. Jofra Archer needs to play. There's a big debate about whether Jofra Archer should be in England side or should he play for the West Indies. There's a big debate about that. He's got his British passport now, so. But Owen Morgan's apparently trying to derail that move there and put the brakes on it a little bit. But I think we have to look at bowling as an issue. Bowling is a problem. Not gonna lie, batting's fine. As long as they don't give away silly wickets, the batting has more than enough talent in T20 and one days to win you matches single handedly. Bowling, if you have to bat second and you know you've got to chase, and if your bowlers don't perform and the opposition put up a big total, and then you're putting pressure on your batsman, the bowling isn't quite good enough. That's the same at Test level as well, because Jimmy Anderson's right at the end of his career now. There's not much in the way of Roland Jones. This is a wider thing. It's not just one day, but the bowling lineup. Roland Jones came into the side last summer, was really good, gets injured, doesn't go on the Ashes. Ben Stokes, moron, gets arrested, goes on the Ashes, doesn't play. Moeen Ali, spin bowler, not at his best. He looked like he was carrying an injury. Sam Curran comes in. He's a bit on the slow side for a fast pacer. He's a fast medium, but he's still young. He's a teenager, so I wouldn't write him off. But he's very inexperienced. Same with his brother Tom. They're very inexperienced. Chris Wokes, fitness issues. Stuart Broad, average bowler. I would say average. He gets the wickets, but he can be really, really expensive. Plunkett, solid if not out spectacular. Rashid, better at shorter formats of the game. But you've still got, this is what gets me. We've had some great bowlers that we have underutilised, and I'm going to go back to one of my favourite players, Ryan Sidebottom. He's actually can bowl faster than Jimmy Anderson. He's now retired, but they didn't work around his injuries very well. He had one Test appearance a long time ago, at the same time as Jimmy Anderson, and then he was never recalled until 2008, 2009, 2010. At which point, Jimmy Anderson had established himself in the Test side, and obviously he only got a hand. Oh God, Sexual Chocolate, brilliant player, one of my favourite bowlers because he could bat a bit as well, so he was very handy with bat and ball. But no, Wonks is more of a fitness issue, and Moeen Ali, when he is on, he can spin you off a park. He can, but he's been overused and he's tired. Stuart Broad's past his best, and Jimmy Anderson's wearing down rapidly. But the issues with England cricket is a bit more than just a weaker bowling lineup at the moment. We have got some Roland Jones. If he's fit, he's pretty good. Roland Jones is pretty good. He's a late bloomer. He was playing just local club cricket until recently, and then he got picked up by county. But unfortunately, he got injured at the wrong time. He was really on it. Not the quickest, but my God, he can reverse swing it and bamboozle a batsman, lower order up, or doesn't matter. Ben Stokes, I think he shouldn't be around the side with that legal clouds over his head. He's still got a trial to face. And then he goes and injures himself anyway, so that's great. Plunkett, it's not bad. Woods, young. Woods and Wokes, I think they can do something. Best did quite well as a spinner, and he can bat as well. We've got too many all-rounders, though. You look at that. I'm going through all the all-rounders here. Stokes, Wokes, Bess, Ali. There's like 5 all-rounders there that can all 4 or 5 all-rounders that can all bat and bowl. What you need is a couple of proper 85, 90 mile an hour fast bowlers who can take your head off. And Jofra Archer could do that. But Owen Morgan's dragging his feet and doesn't particularly want him in the side because he says for whatever reason, ironically, Owen Morgan should piss off to Ireland, but he can't say that. It's a difficult one. England's cricket issues have got also. You've got to look at the TV rights as well, with viewership declining. The peak of English cricket fandom was in 2005, and it's been declining since Sky got the TV rights, and it's been declining rapidly ever since. But when I do get to see a Test match on the telly from around a friend's house, and they got Sky Sports, to say that English kids aren't interested in the game is a load of crap, because there's plenty of kids at games. I cannot understand the ECB's standpoint and the ECB's logic with this 100-ball format. Make it less complicated by making the final over really complicated. If you want to have an exciting, fun format, T20s, you think it's not marketing it right. That's the ECB's problem. They tried to stop the 50-over game coming in for the World Cup originally. They tried to drag their feet on that, hence why they never won the bloody thing, because the ECB had tried to derail that back in the 70s and were rightly made to look like fools. They bring in T20 because they think, we need to make the game more interesting. Don't trademark it, and then they try and sabotage T20 at every opportunity because they've screwed up the development of that side of the game. And now they're trying to bring in the 100-ball format that no one wants. But if you notice, all the players they've interviewed on it are all on centralised contracts. So what they're going to do? Of course they're going to be yes men. And this is what I don't like about sport. So I'm going to finish on this. We've seen with England, with the team sheet with the World Cup being leaked. And the players have basically said, and Gareth Southgate said, well, we've given you access. We get the most access the media's ever had to an England or an international camp for a tournament ever. I would like it if the players weren't so media coached and were allowed to speak their minds, going, I think you're going too far there. I don't think that's acceptable. It may be with a bit more fruitful language. I'd rather see players really give the V sign to the media sometimes. I don't like, it's like Ben Youngs when England got battered by South Africa in the second test, and they go, how do you feel? And he goes, well, he's clearly feeling like shit. And he just walks off after 15 seconds. Why the hell should he apologise? He's being himself. Because whatever players do when they play well, okay, yeah, the media want to grovel in front of them and go, give us a story, come on, oh, we love you. As soon as they have one bad game, they get thrown under a bus. I think they've got to have a bit more respect to these individuals. They are human beings. They are individuals. They will have their concerns and they will have their likes and dislikes. Actually, sit down with them away from the whole corporate side and actually have an interview with them individually. And go, sit down, what do you like and don't like? I'd rather have a player who's a bit more honest, a bit more open, rather than media coached. I don't like this media coaching. Don't like the corporate media side of things, where they're just corporate droids. They suck the personality out of them. I like to see sportsmen and women with a bit of personality, and occasionally you do get the occasional maverick. And you just got to look at the NHL in John Tortorella. He doesn't toe the corporate line. That's why I like John Tortorella. He may not be the best coach out there. Yes, he's won a Stanley Cup and he coaches teams to the playoffs, and he's improved Columbus no end. But when it comes to press conferences, he really doesn't give a toss. Really doesn't. He really doesn't. And there's one particular journalist for the New York Times. He really doesn't like Brooksy, and he tells him to. He's told him to fuck off more than once, and he's brilliant. John Tortorella is brilliant when it comes to press conferences. He's not the only one. Like Daryl Sutter's pretty good. And he's now sadly retired from coaching, Daryl Sutter, but he was pretty good as well. I like hockey coaches because they're not this corporate dull type. The players are generally media coached pretty well for the most part. When they go off one as well, they can be. I like seeing my sportsmen and women with fire, personality, and a bit of aggression about it. When especially the commentator, ever been in a fight, Brooksy? You ever been in a fight? We'll get that for you, thick skull. So you're not going to ask a question? No. Well, guess let's fuck off then. Yeah. Bye. Yes. Ever been in a fight, Brooksy? That's brilliant. Get that for you, thick skull. I guess I'm not Brooksy. That's what I'm telling you. Well, then fuck off then. It's brilliant. I might have. I've got the Tortorella beard going as well. Got a bit of a Torts beard guy. No, he does speak his mind a lot, and he has had some major league fines. He has been fined. but he speaks his mind. If he thinks the media are asking really stupid questions, he's like, "This is how I feel." Some of the players have done that before. There have been some players who've come out and been themselves and said, literally, "What the are you doing? Serious." I think one of the Boyle brothers was like, "Get the fuck out of here! I don't want you in our dressing room. You're an arsehole." I think it was Brooksy again. I think Brooksy. I think it was. I forget which Boyle brother it was. I don't know if it was Brian Boyle or the other Boyle. But they're in the change room after a game, and clearly whatever's happened's happened. The game hasn't gone great, or there's been a mistake, or there's been a penalty, or something like that. And I think it's Brooksy again, and Boyle just stands up and goes, "I don't want you in here. Everyone else can stay because we're having a good, interview. But you," and he singles this guy out and basically gets up, walks towards him, and threatens to throw him out the dressing room. That's brilliant. Sometimes I do think the media need to ask sensible questions. If you look at the outtake for Roy Hodgson, the England manager, when he was at Fulham, I believe. That's brilliant. George Roy on Joe Thornton. That is brilliant. He couldn't have put it better. Don't get me wrong, love Joe Thornton, but yeah, has never won a Stanley Cup. I don't think he's even got a personal award from the NHL awards. He might have got a personal award, but I don't think he's even won an Olympic gold with Canada. I would be interested to see on his personal record there. But John Tortorella just comes out and just says his mind. Roy Hodgson, the former England manager in football, the media guy is asking a really stupid question, and Hodgson tells him to fuck off, and it is absolutely hilarious because they cut and then they go, "Well, you've asked a stupid question again. I've told you," and it's all an outtake because they try to put it live and he kicks off. And it's been leaked now. It's brilliant, and Hodgson really gives him both barrels. And Hodgson's normally very, 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 very patient with the media, and he may not have the best come across in the most flowing voice when he's giving his media conferences, but he's normally very, very calm with the media, and he's normally praising his players or saying that they put the effort in. He's normally very calm, but this time he really blows up and he just loses his. It's like Kevin Keegan in '96. There's been a couple where they have really blown up. And I like that. I actually find it kind of human. Yes, Mark, I am enjoying the World Cup. It's good to see you on the live stream. I know you've hit 1,000 subs. We've sort of slowed down a little bit in our end. We haven't really kicked on as much as I would have wanted the last week and a half. We've had some good growth at the beginning of the month, and it slowed a little bit. But no, the World Cup, I am enjoying it because there's been no goalless games. There's been a lot of late-minute drama. The VAR could be better, and we could discuss that. We could discuss that a lot, actually, the VAR, especially after last night's game. We discussed the England game against Tunisia, and we look at that, and I mentioned that in my review of the game, and the Harry Kane being rugby tackled off the ground. It happened last night again for Serbia. I do think the VAR, when it is picking things up, it's working. Neymar's dive for the penalty, rightly not given. He should have been booked for that simulation then. That's what it says in the book. If you are cheating to win and you are found to have cheated, be it diving, handling the ball, and you're caught, you should be booked. So they need to sort that out. I know this is the first World Cup with VAR and it is an experiment and they are pushing ahead with it. One thing I will say about the VAR, I am loving the fact that it's getting 90% of the decisions right that it looks into. Yes, Wimbledon is coming up. Andy Murray may or may not play. He is playing at Eastbourne, but we're not sure if he's going to play in the main draw at Wimbledon yet. Dan Evans has now got into the qualifiers. They didn't give him a wild card, so that's going to be interesting to see how that all happens. So thank you I think it's the first time you've been in the live stream. Really appreciate the questions. You had a lot of questions. And of course, I'll leave with the John Tortorella. Have you ever been in a fight, Brooksy? Or have you? Well, no. I'll guess not. I'm not going to talk to you then. We'll get that through your fucking. Well, fuck off then. Yeah. I'll do my Tortorella impersonation. It's worked. Thank you very much, Baba. I had to put that in there. I've got the Tortorella beard going. And hell of a player, but he hasn't won a goddamn thing in his life. That's probably one of the best comments he's ever given. And of course, him blowing up during the Calgary Flames Vancouver Canucks line brawl back in 2014. And he tried to break into the Calgary dressing room, and he was really going for several of the Calgary coaching staff. That not necessarily the best thing. We you don't need but John Tortorella, hey, he's a maverick coach, but he has won a Stanley Cup. So, but anyway, thank you very much, Baba, for being here. and we'll see you around. Got to do this around work because I might have a new job lined up and contract worker at the moment, so we're trying to juggle a lot of stuff. But thank you very much for being involved. Yeah, Mike, when VAR is used, it is effective. You've got to look at the Neymar penalty that isn't given because he dives, and you've got to look at the France, the Griezmann one that is given. Even though you could say it's a 50-50, it's also the interpretation of the officials looking at the VAR as well. They have got, I think, got one decision wrong they've viewed, but when they are missing ones, like the Tunisia-England game with the wrestling in the box and the Serbia game last night against Switzerland, where Lichtsteiner and Schär rugby tackle Mitrovic to the ground, and it is what I would describe, and I know you're not a big rugby fan, but I've described it as a perfect choke tackle. One high, one low, bring him down. It's a perfect two-man rugby tackle. You wouldn't see much, you'd be hard pressed to find much better in rugby union or rugby league. You really would. So if you're watching the South Africa England rugby union game later, you'll see tackles like that with two big players. They're going to try and isolate the ball carrier and bring him down to the ground and win a penalty for holding on the ground or whatever it may be. Perfect rugby tackle, not a football tackle, not given, and it's so obvious, so obvious. As soon as that replay is up, all the fans, even the Swiss fans, are like, "Yeah, you should have given that." You could sense the reaction with the Serbian and the Swiss fans going. The Swiss fans are like sigh. You can hear the sigh from the Swiss fans, and you can hear the hissing and the booing from the Serbians. And obviously, Serbia has a strong link with Russia. There were a lot of Russians supporting the Serbians as well. They weren't happy. The way it's been used in England, it's only been used for FA Cup games, and it's only used when the Premier League side is the home side, which I think is a wrong system. If you're using it bits and pieces, you've got to go whole way with the FA Cup, and the FA have got to fund it. The FA have the money to fund it, and they're expecting the clubs to pay for it, which I think is wrong. And the Premier League have voted against implementing it for this coming season, which is telling because the FIFA have gone ahead with it. It's been used in Germany as well to great success. It's also been used in Australia, and in their A-League Grand Final, which we will call, let's say, the FA Cup final, so their main trophy, it failed, and the referee had to be pragmatic, and the goal that was given shouldn't have been. So if VAR was working in the A-League Grand Final, it would have gone to penalties, because it was the only goal of the game. So I have done a video on that. It is a talking point, but it's not being as controversial as it could have been. There hasn't, apart from the occasional, the two games I mentioned, like the Serbia, Switzerland, and England, Tunisia, where there was wrestling in the box, that's seriously blatant. For the most part, it has actually got the decisions right. The Iceland penalty yesterday, they went on to miss it. The referee didn't give that. The Icelandic players went bananas, and then out of nowhere, he's reviewing it. I think it could be clearer how they say that there's a VAR review. The referees are mic'd up, but they're not mic'd up so we, the fans, can hear. That's something football needs to work on long term, because rugby union, rugby league, cricket, you don't really hear the verbals, but you know what the hand signals mean, and there is a more respect for the officials. That's another thing that needs to change with the players, is the respect for the officials. Ice hockey has it. Other sports use video referees very, very well. But we've seen with tennis, with Joanna Konta blowing up because the review system didn't work or whatever, they didn't have it. But when, there could be it's how it's implemented. It is much better. We're actually seeing it now in every game it's being used. So we're seeing it a lot. We're getting used to seeing it on a consistent basis, which is what it should be in the future in the Premier League. Is every game should have it, and we're going to get more used to it. There are those fans who don't want it, but unfortunately, sport has got to evolve. Other sports have done this far, far sooner, a long time ago. We've had live TV coverage of football for 40 years, 50 years, since I would say the 66 World Cup. Or was it the 62 World Cup? The first one was broadcast on TV. We've had TV coverage of the World Cup since the 60s. Now, the quality level of the World Cup TV coverage has improved with colour, Technicolor, and the growth of satellite. So 1970, 74, 78, 82, 86. The instant replay coming in, which is better quality as well. So, I think what is meant to happen is the referee can't call for it to go upstairs. He has to get his earpiece. They have to call to him saying that we've seen something. That also happens a lot in rugby. If the referee isn't sure about something, in rugby they do ask, I've seen, is it a goal, is it not a goal, is it offside, is it not offside, and they ask. You can't do that in football. It doesn't work because of the flow of the game and how the game's played. However, he's always got that mic on. He's always communicating. So we need to hear the mics fully mic'd up so we at home can hear. Even if it's in a foreign language and they have to put a translator in and say this is, and they have that translator commentator goes, this is what the referee's asking. It may sound strange, but that's the way it's got to go. It is interesting, but very few leagues or federations have actually been trialing this. England's one of them. Germany's another, and Australia. The Germans are the only league to send officials to this World Cup. So whether they, with Kalina, yes, the former referee Kalina, who's in charge of referees at this World Cup and their referee development, whether they've had some input and they've sat down in the referee discussion saying that this is what we've had to deal with this season. This is how our system's worked and not worked. Here's the pros and cons. This is what we got right and got wrong. We don't know what's happened behind the scenes with the officiating teams and how they've done reviews and discussions and planning for it. But it seems to be working reasonably well. We just have to see if it fucks up in the final, like it did in the Australian Grand Final in the A-League. If there's a screw up in the final, that's where it's different. That's where it's important. So far, these are group games, and they are crucial, but they're not as crucial as knockout games where literally it could be next goal wins. It could go to extra time and the next goal wins kind of situation. But penalties are already up. We've already got a record number of penalties, and there's going to be even more. So that record's going to be a huge number. There's over half the goals have come from set plays. That's including free kicks and corners in that. So not just penalties, it's corners always have goals coming from them. But there's more free kicks. There's going to be more free kicks that go on goal. So Ronaldo and Kolarov, for example, use them. Of course, there's more penalties. So yes, I am surprised with the amount of penalty misses we've had. Also, another thing that's happened in this World Cup is the temperatures and the humidity. The further south you go, the hotter and more humid it is. And that's partly to do with the geography of the country. So the Caucasus, so you've got the Caspian Sea on one side, which is an inland sea, and you've got the Black Sea, which is almost an inland sea. So you've got two big, large bodies of water. And then you've got rather flat land with the Ural Mountains as a spine that sort of forces cold air into warm air. And it's basically high pressure at the moment, but it's very hot, very humid, and there are thunderstorms. So Kaliningrad yesterday had several thunderstorms before the game. The temperature in Rostov, which is right on the Black Sea coast, I think the other night was hitting still at, I think Russian time, 8-9 p.m. was still 30 degrees and really hot, really humid. So that's having an effect on how the game is played. You're going to see this in the Rugby Union World Cup next year in Japan, because when they had the World Cup in Japan and Korea, it does get very hot and very humid on the Pacific Rim. And that was the thing that happened in 2002. So next year, Rugby Union World Cup, the same conditions will apply. It'll be slightly later in the year, but the same issues will apply with humidity, the fact that that part of the world suffers from typhoons as well, and you get those big storms coming in. Russia, it gets very hot, very humid. The land bakes. You've got the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea, where the moisture comes over. Thunderstorms. A lot of thunderstorms. We will see some thunderstorms in this World Cup. Or the temperatures to go up and up and up, because we're expecting warm weather here, and there's going to be a lot of warm weather over Europe for the next 2-3 weeks. And that could basically mean hot, dry, or hot, humid conditions where there's not a lot of rain and it's baking hot, and that will affect players. We look at Iceland yesterday, they ran out of energy in the second half, not because they didn't have the ability to win the game. The humidity didn't. And the Nigerians adapted to it better, partly because when they play their qualifying games, they're in Nigeria for half of them, and that's hot and tropical. And also, it's a country where they're born, they're raised, some of them are used to it. As kids, they grow up, working around it, and it's how you adapt. And some people just do not like hot, humid conditions. They do really struggle, and they do get lethargic, and the humidity does really take a lot of energy out of you. Just even if you sat there as a fan, the sweating, you get dehydrated, your lactic acid build up. The recovery from that takes longer. Cramping is an issue. A lot of players have been going down with cramp. But it's been a really interesting tournament. The fact we've still had no goalless games, even the games that have been draws. There has been excitement in some of them, and yes, some games weren't great, and there are hard debates whether growing the tournament to 48 teams is the right way to go. And the Iran Morocco game is used as an example of why we shouldn't. Okay, then, if that's the example of why we shouldn't, when we have two of the higher ranked teams really, let's say Belgium England is a dull 0-0 next week. Are you going to say that means we shouldn't have 48 teams because two of the better teams of the tournament are just playing out a meaningless draw? Because we don't know if Tunisia decide to go, right, okay, we need to beat this Belgian side, and they beat them, and they get a win. That really mixes the group up. Nigeria were bad the first game against Croatia and were deservedly beaten. They were better in the second game against Iceland and won. Are you saying because Nigeria? I mean, this is what I can't stand about people. The fact Panama have got there, they qualified by right in the current qualifying system. They were better than other teams around them. They beat Costa Rica, who've already gone out of the World Cup. Panama are still technically in the World Cup. If they lose today, they may be on the way out, but it all depends on what Tunisia do. It does. Well, if they lose, tomorrow, they could be out, but it all depends on what Tunisia do. Tunisia beat Belgium. It throws the group wide open, and Panama could still get out. Panama have qualified against teams that are regularly qualified for the World Cup that have a better player base. They're growing the game there. They're getting extra funding. So you're telling, and people are saying to me there shouldn't be 48 teams in the World Cup. It's wrong. But they're targeting one particular game of why they shouldn't be. There have been some games that haven't been great, and this is from high quality teams. Brazil have been appalling. Uruguay have been appalling. Uruguay have just got 1-0 wins. But here's the thing that will happen when you get 48 teams. There will be some big blowouts. So look at Saudi Arabia in the first game against Russia. The Russians aren't a brilliant side. They've had a very poor build-up. They're very lowly ranked. They put 5 past a team that are equal ranking. They put 3 past the next team they played that were a better team. So it's the way it's going to go. Plus, when you've got three co-hosts, it's going to have to go that way, whether we want it or not. All it means is the number of groups will stay the same. You just get an extra team in each group. That's it. That is pretty much it. Or an extra 2 team, or you might change the group structure slightly. But all in all, the format will be the same pyramid format. It will. And I don't see a big issue with the tournament as a whole. It may mean they started slightly earlier and they finished it slightly later, which will affect the post and pre-season of regular football. But it just means more players get that exposure on the world stage. Lesser nations can get that exposure, which means they can possibly get increased funding, and the sponsors and investors will be more interested. And there are some star players that haven't made this World Cup. You've got to look at Italy and Netherlands not qualifying. And you've got to look at some of the teams that have qualified, like Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, and Peru, Colombia. The South American teams haven't played well at all. So it's an interesting debating point, and it's a debating point that won't go away. But they did say 32 teams was too big when it was 24. They said 24 would be too much when it was 16. This is every time they talk about expanding it, and they end up doing it anyway. Some fans, say, "Oh, expanding it's a bad idea. Not going to work." In the past, when we've had tournaments at a smaller amount, we've had some hopeless teams in there. We've had El Salvador and Zaire have made it. Haiti made it. And Haiti played quite well when they were in 74. But the old former Zaire, which is Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the worst teams ever, managed to get into a World Cup. They lost every game, but they got in a World Cup. I mean, El Salvador managed to get into a World Cup and get battered. They've actually been to a few World Cups. So you're going to get those mismatches. I mean, I remember watching Serbia get battered 6-0 by Argentina in 2006. And that was a decent Serbian side, and they were just completely hammered. So it's a mismatch. That was the year Montenegro got independence from them as well. So that was the last Serbia and Montenegro side. And they got absolutely slaughtered. So it is what it is. I mean, we beat Germany 5-1 in qualifying back in 2001. And that was a German side that went on to the World Cup final a year later. So honestly, it's a complete, um, you know, on the day any team can beat anyone, apart from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia are just hopeless, but um, every team is giving it a go in attack, and the counter attack is the way forward, and possession football isn't. The tiki taki Spanish style isn't working as effectively because they played that against Portugal and they conceded 3 goals. And they were shown up to be defensively frail. And when you attacked them with pace, they didn't like it. And they were very slow and measured, and they weren't enough. If they did that with a bit more pace, yes, they win. But slow, methodical possession football doesn't work. Not at this World Cup, anyway. I mean, maybe that style of football takes its day for now, and the game has to evolve again. But no, so far the tournament's been decent. There's been no crowd trouble. The atmosphere in stadiums has been very, very good. There's even been some vuvuzelas that got in there somehow, which is annoying because I thought FIFA banned them after the 2010 World Cup, but is what it is. And so far, yeah. And of course in 2 hours' time, the Belgium Tunisia game kicks off, and I'll be watching that. I'll do a review on that, and then of course we've got 3 games today. I think we've got 3 games tomorrow, and then the group stage starts winding down beginning of next week, and then we have the final group games, and then we go on to the knockout stages, and that's when it gets really interesting, and that's when we will have public discussions about VAR being more crucial in games, and VAR having an effect, and is it working and is it not working, and how is it implementing, and are they reviewing it after every game, going, have we got a few decisions wrong? Let's not get them wrong again. This is what happens when you have a new system with anything. It's teething problems. It's a learning curve for all the officials, and the players need to react respectively towards the officials, because I don't like these charging up to the ref and shouting in his face. You don't get that in other tournaments. To be honest, we shouldn't worry about who we get. This is an issue that comes with every World Cup if we want to avoid playing this team or this team. That negative mindset is why we lose, partly. It shouldn't matter. You've got to beat the best to win the tournament. You have to get to the final and win, or to go as far as possible, you have to beat some very good sides. It doesn't matter who we get from Group H. I can't remember who's actually in Group H. I've got to find my wall chart's over there. But honestly, for me, it doesn't really matter, because you've got to beat the best teams to win the tournament. So you shouldn't really be cherry picking. We'd rather have them than them. We need to go out and win every game, and that's what some teams fail to do. Honestly, Senegal are in the driving seat because of how they won against Poland, and the energy. They're the only African side that's played well. Colombia have never got out of the group after losing the first group game, so we have to see how Colombia do as well. Japan, Poland, they're the 2 sides that are in it at the moment. Japan's probably the weakest side in that group, if you look at it, but Poland didn't play well either. Honestly, I don't think it really matters. I think England have a very good track record, and have had played some classic games against Colombia in the past. You've just got to look at Rene Higuita's scorpion kick save in a friendly in '95 before the Euro '96 tournament. We played them in '98 in France and beat them. It's Beckham's first ever England goal. That was that free kick. We have. When else did we play them? We played Colombia before a few times. We have played Colombia a few times and had some classic matches. And our record against Colombia is good. Senegal, I don't think we played Senegal before. That will be interesting, because a few of the Senegalese players do play in England, and there is a track record of Senegalese players playing in England and doing rather well. But a lot of those Senegal players don't play in England. That will be interesting to see how a team with confidence, and that is a Senegal team right now, they are with confidence. Their coach is also Senegalese, which is, and he was part of the 2002 side. Technically, he's of French as well. He's got a French passport, but he's also representing Senegal because he's got dual nationality. He's the only ethnic minority coach at the tournament, as well, which is really interesting. They have a very good, at the moment, a very good team unity in Senegal. They seem to have a very good positive vibe there. I think that'll be a good game. Poland, they were shocking, but we have a very interesting footballing history against Poland. Some wins, some losses, but good rivalry there. Japan's the weakest side in that group. but they got a very good win against Colombia. Poland and Colombia underperformed, although Colombia had a player sent off. Both games were 2-1. But I don't think it really matters who we have to play. We have to play and beat the best. Fact. If you want to go on and win a title, you have to beat everyone placed in front of you. You shouldn't go, oh, we want to avoid them, we want to get these guys. You should go out there to try and win. That mindset needs to change. I think Southgate's actually got that mindset where he says, because he's been in those camps where the manager and with the media have gone, we want to avoid these guys and get these guys, and it's sort of got into the mindset. I think he's gone with that mindset of like, we've got to play the best to beat the best to be the best. Play the best to beat the best to be the best. That's a mouthful. Try and say that 10 times really fast. But that is one of the weaker groups, I think. But it's an interesting one. The debating point coming up where people say, we want to have an easier route to the final. There is no easy route to the final. There isn't. In 66, and I know I'm going to go back to 66 as an example. The group stages, we weren't great. Slow start. And then we played Mexico, and Bobby Charlton scores a screamer against Mexico. In the quarterfinal, we had to play an Argentina side that had Diego Ratin as captain. And that was a very good Argentina side at the time. Then we had to go and play Portugal with Eusebio. Beat them. Then we had to play the West Germans with Beckenbauer and co. And we beat them. That's how you win a tournament, is you've got to beat the best teams in the world. Especially if it's a team. Same with tennis as well. Same with individuals. You have to beat the best in front of you. I do think that is one of the weakest groups in the tournament. I'm not going to lie about that. But they're very, very good sides in their own right. But it's also one of the weaker groups because I would say Colombia is probably the best team in there. But they underperformed in the first game. Senegal have the passion and the energy right now and the confidence. Poland look a little bit nervous. They do. And Japan, I think, they're solid if not outstanding. It doesn't really matter. It is very unpredictable. I think Colombia-Senegal is going to be a proper clash of playing cultures. That's going to be a very open game. Japan-Poland, that's going to be a very tense game. Colombia have to win their second game. They have to. Senegal in a drive. I think Senegal are in the pole position in that group because they just play high energy, passion, and they have got some. And African players always have great technical skill, if not overall teamwork. But they make up for their deficiencies with the energy levels and the passion and the physicality they bring. And Senegal, their coach is part of that team that did really well at the 2002 World Cup. He knows what it means to get some unity in that group, get out of a group, and then get out into the knockout stages and entertain and surprise people. He knows what being an underdog is all about. And Senegal have produced some great players over the years, and continue to do so. Poland, I'm not sold on Poland at all. Really not. There are some issues with that Polish side. Their formation's too rigid. Lewandowski needs more support, but Lewandowski needs to be more of a team player as well. He's too much of an ego. Japan, just generally solid. Great technical ability. They've still got Kazuki Honda, so anything's possible with his dead ball skills. Colombia, James Rodriguez. And South Americans always play with this laissez-faire attitude, and occasionally their discipline is lacking as well. South American discipline is shocking when it comes to football. They will put some cynical tackles in, and also, as I said, goalkeeping. South Americans not famous for it. So when you have a crazy goalkeeper having a moment like Willie Caballero, he's obviously read the Rene Higuita goalkeeping manual of South American goalkeepers, Chapter 4, the Howler. South Americans aren't famed for producing world-class goalkeepers. When they do get the occasional one, even then, they are unpredictable and mavericks. Defensively, when you've got a South American team on song, they're not great defensively. They're all about passion, spontaneity, and attack. It's the same with Brazilian football. It's the same with with Colombia. South American football is based upon two things: free flowing attack, um, and generally in defence, crazy defending. It's based on a principle of having fun, because when they grow up playing the game in the favela in Brazil, or the barrio in Argentina, or I forget what they call the slums in Colombia, but when they're playing in the shanty towns, or the districts on the little football pitches, there is no referees. Skill is how you get out of trouble, and defensively, if you want to stop a player, you just kick lumps out of them. It's how they play. They also come from a continent that is very known for political instability, with a lot of military governments and political violence, and that tempers how they play the game as well. Because they're brought up around this unpredictable world. So, but that's why I like watching South American football, because when it's all attack, it's beautiful. Defensively, it's shambles. It's brilliant. It's entertaining, if nothing else. Um, Although Colombia is one of the more defensively prudent teams, I will say that with a bit of respect, they do defend better than some other South American teams. But generally, South American defending is a good tackle followed by a bad one, and marking. It depends whether the defender can be bothered to mark. Really, if you look at Roberto Carlos's career, he used to try and do overhead kicks in the box to clear the ball. So, and he would fluff them up and it would lead to a goal. So, yeah, but it's interesting to watch. South American teams are actually at their best when they're allowed to be free flowing and expressive. When they're overcoached, like you're seeing with this Brazil side right now, and this Argentina side, and Uruguay and Peru, they don't look as good. They don't look as happy. They like basically being free, to express themselves in attack and in defence. They will be brutal. Um, but yeah, no, I've got to go as well, because I want to have a little go on the Xbox. I want to have a cup of tea, because I've got to have my morning cup of tea, and I've got to sort a few bits and pieces out. And I've got my notepad ready for World Cup games. Yeah, I made a homemade notepad out of about. So instead of having to buy one, I just got a load of cheap printer paper, and I stapled it together and hacked it into quarters. And I've got a couple of pads made because my notebook is falling apart. But no, it's great to see some of the questions. I mean, we haven't just discussed just the World Cup football. We've had some other topics brought up. We've covered ice hockey and the NHL especially, and cricket. We've touched on a few other bits and pieces, but no. Anyway, thank you very much to everyone who was involved in the live stream. I know it wasn't the longest and it wasn't the busiest, but those involved, brilliant as always. It's always a joy to interact with you guys and have conversations with you guys. And you are some, I find you guys really good, interesting, in the sense that you always ask brilliant questions, and we discuss some really interesting topics. And we may not always agree on everything, but I like the debates we have. So thank you very much for everyone. And I'll be doing my World Cup videos later, and my reviews on them. So keep your eyes peeled. There will be other videos on other sports, because Andy Murray, will he not play at Wimbledon? Will he play at Wimbledon? That kind of thing. But thank you very much for watching, and I've enjoyed this little live stream. So toodle pip, and I shall see you soon. Not the best one, but that will do.